Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back with another video, and this is going to be the LEGO Star Wars Mach Showcase episode 17. This is a series I've created to highlight some of the best mocks I've come across on the internet, so if you find any of the mocks in this video impressive, all I ask is that you go to the links I've included in the description and support the builder by giving them a like, comment, or even a follow. The first mock we're going to take a look at today is an Imperial turbo tank build by Simon Wild. I've been meaning to put this in the series for a while, just it really didn't fit in with some of the episodes I did, so here it is, and I love this build so much. Unfortunately, it is a render. I try to include physical builds as much as I possibly can. I just don't think Simon has gotten around to building this thing in physical bricks, nor do I know whether or not he ever intends on doing so, but I thought the build was just so good. I definitely wanted to show it off in this series, so taking a look at it, I like that he uses the wheels from the Clone Wars turbo tank. I think that those are the ideal piece for a turbo tank at this size, so good usage of pieces there. I think they're actually thicker than the wheels on that Clone Wars turbo tank. I think he used one more of those wheel pieces to make them a little bit wider, which is actually pretty nice as well. I think the shaping of this thing is terrific. That's really the most important thing when it comes to the turbo tank. You know, there's all these like trapezoidal angles that you have to really nail down to make it look accurate, and I think he does a wonderful job at that. Moving on to the next photo, we get a look at the back, or some may even consider this the front of the turbo tank. I think in canon, it's either the back or the front. The turbo tank's kind of made to go either way. There's no distinguished front or back to it, which is, I don't know, kind of interesting. Definitely changes up a lot of the dynamic of my playing with my toy turbo tank as a child. But anyways, one of the things I actually really like about this build is this little greebling section between like that very front section and then the larger back section. I just know there's just a good usage of parts in there, like the taps, the wheel, and then just the 6 length bars with the 1x1 cylinders on there. I like the way that those pieces are kind of compiled together. I also like the cannon that's on the very back. It's kind of sitting on a bunch of those quarter dome pieces, and he uses the binocular pieces. Looks like it's on a Travis brick going all around it, and it's a pretty sweet looking cannon. I love that building technique when people use it. Another cool little detail he's added in is I guess would be the equivalent of shocks on a turbo tank at the bottom. There's basically those little sections like right above the wheels. My best guess is it's supposed to simulate some sort of like shock absorbers on a turbo tank, or whatever the equivalent would be in the Star Wars universe. So those actually look really good down there. That was always one of my criticisms of the original turbo tank, and really all the turbo tanks that LEGO has done. I feel they don't make like that bottom section near the wheels look bulky enough. It's always like rather thin. So I think that he actually did a really good job at making that look a little bit more bulky. Moving on to the final picture, we get a good look at the interior, and this is definitely, I think, the coolest part of this vehicle. The fact that the interior just all opens up as one build. Like typically when you see a turbo tank, it kind of opens up in sections, and some people might prefer that, but I love the fact that this is one cohesive interior, because that's really what we experienced in the film in Rogue One. You know, you could kind of see kind of one end of the vehicle to another, so I like that that is consistent in this model, and it's a pretty cool looking interior. It's mostly black, which I think is pretty nice. We got pilots on either side, so I mean, it looks like there's more kind of guys in the command center towards the right side. So here's what we're gonna do. I know I asked you guys earlier to tell me which side you think is the front. We'll use this picture as a reference. So using this picture, do you think the left side is the front or the right side is the front? Obviously, like I said in canon, like either side can be the front, but which of you guys do you think is like the main front per se? Definitely let me know. But really, all in all, I think it's just a pretty cool mock. It's a good idea for a mock. I could really see LEGO making a set of this sometime down the road, something like another big Rogue One set that we can get, and it was definitely a pleasant surprise seeing a familiar clone turbo tank riding down the desert in Rogue One. So great job on this mock, Simon. Next mock we're going to take a look at is a Yavin IV mock by Legomania. I swear, Yavin IV is such an aesthetically pleasing Star Wars location, and I always enjoy having these mocks here on the mock showcase. But let's just dive right into it. So for one, I love the usage of like leaf pieces all on like the building. I mean, it's clearly a little vignette, but I think he incorporates all the important elements of Yavin, like obviously, you know, the vines and like leaves kind of growing out of the structure, the kind of cobblestone ground. You know, it's not perfect. It's actually kind of in ruins, but I mean that's part of the Yavin aesthetic as well. And then of course just the grass around the area. But specifically, I'm really liking the way that those leaf pieces look on top of the building. I think that if you had just kind of left that bare, it wouldn't look nearly as nice. So I mean, just having that green there contrasting with the tan, I feel actually goes quite a long way. And then there's just a lot of good parts usage in the ground as well, like I mentioned earlier. I see like masonry bricks, profile bricks, just many different uses of like bricks and tiles to make the ground look very imperfect, but just really gives that nice Yavin aesthetic. I think the cargo crates over to the right also look pretty nice. I kind of like the use of the masonry brick, but just the straight line side of it kind of being used as part for details for the cargo crates, and then the one laying right next to it with that 2x2 circular tile with I guess the TIE fighter print on it is actually a really good like a greebling / design piece to put on some cargo crates or like fuel cells or whatever the heck those things might be. I actually like those quite a bit. One thing I really like about this Mach is how these cheese slopes line up. That's actually not a straightforward thing to do at all, to have them to where they kind of lay perfectly flush with another and create one just constant angle, because the cheese slope, it's supposed to be, I mean, it's two studs, because the cheese slope is 2 plates tall, but if you like line one up and then you put another behind it, like 2 plates elevated, you're still gonna get a weird like bump because of how high the cheese slope sits up. So for him to have gotten these to lay flush with each other, actually, I don't know, just as a Mach builder, knowing the thought that actually has to go in to accomplish something like that is just very pleasing to the eye. So I actually appreciate that quite a bit. I talk about this all the time in Machs like this, but minifigure placement here I think is really nice. I love how he has kind of like the fleet troopers in single file walking down the stairs. He has some pilots kind of gathered over in the corner, and then a couple other fleet troopers just going on about their business. It really does just make this Mach look lived in, look lively, and yeah, overall this is just a really nice little vignette. There's a lot of that signature Yavin architecture in there, and just really all the key components of Yavin are all encompassed in this one small little vignette. So here's another idea for a Mach if you guys are considering doing something kind of on a small scale, but really you want to pack in some detail and really want to just create the feeling of an entire planet all on, you know, what might be probably like half a base plate. Here you go, guys. Great example. All right, now rather than the typical photography picture that we do here, I want to do something a little bit different, and something that actually has been done before in the Mach showcase, but I just haven't really done it in a while, and that is to look at a Mach that is actually a work in progress. So one of the ideas I had for this series up front was to, you know, like have weekly updates on people working on various Machs, even if they weren't finished with the Mach per se, still to show you guys, you know, some of the things they're adding to it. Because, I mean, who knows when these Machs may get done, if they ever do get finished. Why kind of deprive you guys of that good content, some of these cool Machs that are currently being developed. So this one we're going to take a look at this week is actually an Aether Hangar by TastenMan77. For one, I just want to say the concept of that is awesome, right? Like, you don't see too many dedicated Aether Hangar builds in Lego, so to see this guy coming up with this one, especially with the amount of detail that is packed throughout this thing, is actually pretty incredible. So just looking at it right now, you see there's a good look at the column, and one of the things you'll notice throughout this build, I have this picture and another one, is just how much detail is packed all throughout this thing, specifically with like the walls and just greebling and things like that. There's a good amount of detail all throughout this build, so I think that like once he gets an AT-AT in here, this will just be a pretty sweet looking Mach. If we go to the next photo, we get a great look at this just giant door, and the door looks pretty sweet. I love the aesthetic of that medium blue that he kind of put in there. It's a nice little color. It just kind of gives, I don't know, a better like hangar feel in my opinion. It's kind of like classic sci-fi somewhat. So I actually like that little touch of color there a lot. And the door is pretty sweet because you can see if you go like down the middle, kind of where the teeth of the door are. And I mean, the fact that he built such a giant door, for one that's not to be able to, you know, have those slopes sideways and kind of fit in together, is actually pretty incredible. My best guess would be that this door probably can open. Just looking at the way it's constructed, it looks like the seams for the door like are pretty consistent with the teeth. So I want to see this thing in action. Like, I don't know if he plans on motorizing it, but if he did, that would be pretty sweet as well. But yeah, these are the only 2 photos I have of this Mach, but this is definitely one I'll be keeping a close eye on because it's just such a cool idea. And then clearly this guy is a great builder. He's been on the series before, so we'll definitely check back in on this Mach in the coming weeks, or whenever he posts another update on it. Next up, we're actually going to do something that I've never done here on the series, and that is to actually revisit a Mach. So a couple of Mach showcases ago, I showed you guys this huge Tattooine collaboration build that was great, and I only could find one photo of it. So shout out to my guy Ballistic Builds. He actually sent me a user on Flickr who had taken a bunch of other pictures of this Mach, and I wanted to show it to you guys. I thought it was definitely worth it because, for one, this is such a huge Mach, and two, some of these close-ups reveal so much more about the Mach. So starting off with this first picture, we get a much better look at the inside of that Imperial base, and I think that just looks so freaking cool, like having the AT-ATs posted up in there. There's just, I mean, it really just stands out so much there. Like, you can imagine, you know, there's just this kind of barren wasteland that is Tatooine and these like stone huts that people have concocted, and then the Empire just has this giant, you know, technologically advanced installation sitting right in the midst of things. Like, it's very Star Wars in my opinion, so I love it for that reason. At both corners of that base, they have 2 giant anti-aircraft turrets, very reminiscent of the Death Star turrets, and you know, there's just, you know, Imperial personnel walking about all over the place, and of course a big satellite on top of the building. So I love this way, the way this looks so much. The same way that the opening of A New Hope can really just tell you all you need to know about the general story of Star Wars, you know, the unmatched, ill-equipped rebels versus the, you know, long-reaching, you know, just technologically advanced Empire. This Mach kind of does that same thing by showing you just what the Empire is all about, this heavily armed, just ridiculous looking base in the midst of this otherwise pretty lowly society in Mos Eisley. So I love this picture a lot. We go to the next picture, we get a better look at that building that the rebels were kind of camping out on, and there's just a great variety of minifigs in this. I think that's probably my favorite thing about this. Like, the build is pretty cool as well, and the kind of conflict that's going on here is fun, but I think just the variety of minifigs used for the rebels is always a draw whenever you're doing a Mach like this. Moving on to the next photo, we get a better look at the anti-aircraft turret on the Imperial base. Like I said, very reminiscent of the Death Star turrets. Very cool stuff. Moving on to the next photo, we get a much better look at the Bantha builds, and these actually look really nice. I love the builds. It really just makes me wish more that LEGO would just give us a Bantha mold. Like, seriously guys, what's the holdup? Can we please get a Bantha? Like, please? Next photo is a look at one of the buildings in this Mach, and I particularly wanted to highlight this one because I love the technique that he used, specifically with those like brown hinges and clips that kind of line up over the dome. I know when a lot of people do these Tatooine Machs, they'll, you know, use those dome pieces and even the like the planet pieces to kind of represent domes, because domes are heavily prevalent in Tatooine. But I liked the added addition of those brown pieces, those clips that go up over it. Just gives that section a lot more detail. I think the architecture of all these buildings is actually quite phenomenal, and the fact that this building is kind of, you know, slightly askew, not just sitting directly on studs, I think adds a lot to the Mach. Final picture is actually kind of funny. So I actually have shown this Mach by itself of just this building on the Mach showcase before. Little did I know it was part of this collaboration that I also showed on the showcase. So I'm not gonna like go back and re-talk about this Mach, other than the fact that like the ground is not all cheese slopes now. It's actually a ground build, which is kind of cool to see it, you know, fit into a bunch of other builds. But I just thought it was kind of funny, like how I was just looking through these photos and this Mach popped up and I was like, okay, that looks familiar. Then I realized, oh yeah, I've already talked about it, and it's here in this Mach. So it's just funny how little things like that happen. So all in all, once again, this Mach is just so incredible. A wonderful collaboration. Shout out to the builders on this thing. If you guys want to see even more photos of this thing, definitely check out the link in the description that I included. And the final premiere Mach we're going to take a look at this week is a beauty. It's by Henjin Quilones. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And it's titled The Streets of Nar Shaddaa. So I believe this was actually done as part of a build contest on Eurobricks. And I mean, I featured a lot of Nar Shaddaa builds in this series and builds that kind of have the same aesthetic. And I love doing so because it just, these builds just all look so nice. And this, what you see right now is actually not even the whole build by a long shot, but just kind of focusing on this first photo. I love the kind of dynamic here. There's like a speeder chase going on, and you know, everyone on the streets are just kind of freaking out, trying to get out of Dodge. And it's just a really nice looking scene. Like from looking at it, you can tell exactly what's going on here. But some of the techniques are actually pretty cool as well. The one that definitely stuck out to me is this giant yellow Nexonite shield piece that's kind of just like sitting right in there on that building. And I mean, it just fits in so well with Star Wars. Like, who would have known that a giant Nexonite shield of all things would be so useful as a Star Wars piece? But clearly it is. I mean, it works out pretty well. So another thing that was really nice about this Mach is I just feel the varying architectures on the buildings. Like, you have the tan building to the far right, and that looks, you know, pretty different, pretty significantly different compared to like the gray building. And then the black building in the middle actually I think looks really sweet, especially with that white stripe going down it. And if you look over to the left, you're kind of getting like Dexter's Diner vibes by that dark gray and dark red building. So for a builder to employ so many different types of just architectural styles in one build, I feel definitely goes a long way. This next thing is a really small thing, but it's a detail that I kind of picked up on, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. So if you look like dead in the center of the Mach and kind of go down a little bit on those pillars with like the lights on them that are kind of lining, I don't think that's water. It looks like maybe that's some sort of like, I don't know, technology down there. I have no idea. But one of the lights, it's like busted, and you can see like the top of it sitting on the ground, and then there's like a cheese slope to represent the broken light. It's such a small thing. It's not a complicated thing at all, but it just looks really cool. If you take a long look at this Mach, you'll notice lots of cool tiny little details like that combined to make this just a very lively looking build. You'll hear me describe builds on this build series with using that word a lot, lively, but it just means a lot, you know? Like when a builder clearly goes a long way to put a lot of thought into their build and to create not only just like one kind of overarching story in their Mach, but a bunch of other little stories as well, I think that just goes a long way. So if we go on to the next photo, we get a much closer look at the speeder chase that's going on, and it looks like one of the guys in the front in the red speeder is actually shooting at the guys in the back speeder. It looks like they're actually both having a shootout with each other, which is kind of scary but also kind of cool. I also love how the dark gray speeder is very clearly inspired by Han's land speeder from Solo. I think that's just a really good design from that film, and like I like that people are taking, you know, design hints from things like that and putting them in other places. It's a good looking Star Wars speeder in my opinion. One of the other things that sticks out to me on this picture is that door on that building to the far left. The teeth that kind of clearly go into the ground. I don't know, it's such a small thing, but it looks really sweet to me. I actually like that quite a bit. And if you look like dead in the center, you see Ronin. No, I'm just kidding. But there's like there's a use of those spring-loaded missile launchers in the door, and I like it when people use that as like a detail piece, because I mean, I can't really think of too many like physical practical uses for that piece in a Mach, but it certainly does create an interesting detail that you really couldn't get otherwise just using Lego pieces. And the final picture is what I was kind of getting at earlier with how what you saw on the outside wasn't even like close to like what this Mach was all about, or close to what this Mach had to offer. So this is the other side of that door with teeth, and on the inside of it, it is this just vast awesome looking speeder repair shop. This is, I guess, the second like speeder repair shop that we've looked at recently on the Mach showcase, but this one is just insane. I love it when you can make a Mach and include a ceiling in it, and you get, you know, a photo of the walls and the ceiling and the floor also included. It just looks, it really does help the person looking at the Mach just kind of shrink themselves down and really envision themselves in the Mach. So there's just so much to talk about here. Some of the things I really like about it are just the various chains hanging from the ceiling. If you look at the ceiling, there's tons of like tubing and pipes and details and stuff like that, and the giant lights that are also kind of going over it do a lot for this Mach as well. I'm not really sure what the story is here. It looks like both speeders just ended up parking in here and now they're getting repairs. Maybe the two groups in the speeders are still at odds, but they realized, hey, we need to like fix our ships real quick. So they decided to call a truce, at least for the meantime. I don't know, but this build just looks so good. Like this picture, it's just so realistic looking. I mean, it's a speeder repair shop. How realistic can you get? But like I said, getting this low angle with the ceiling and floor included just goes a long way to help the person looking at the Mach envision themselves in it. There's also just a ton of detail in the walls here. For example, if you look over to the left, there's I don't even know how you begin to like get those pieces in there, but it's kind of like an exposed section of the wall, and there's a bunch of those like stud shooter the like trigger pieces in there, which is just so freaking cool. Like from at far away, it's like, oh, like there's a ton of detail in there, and then when you look up closely, it's like, oh, that's just a bunch of stud shooter triggers. Like who would have ever thought to use those in there like that? But yeah, guys, I mean, I could talk about this thing for hours, but I really advise all of you, you know, just take like 5 minutes and just appreciate all the little things in this build, in this photo, because this thing is just so incredible. You did an amazing job on this build, dude. This makes me really want to create some sort of Mach like this. I don't know, just one that just looks so detailed, so vast, even though it's kind of confined to one little garage. So all in all, I love this Mach. This is one I've been so excited to show you guys here on the series, so I would definitely love to know what you guys think about it. That's going to finish up the video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed checking out these Machs as much as I enjoyed showing them off to you. Like I always say, all you have to do in this video is just go support the builders. It would mean a lot to me as well as them. They deserve all the credit for their incredible talents, their incredible builds, and I like to give them as much of that as possible in these videos. So go to the links in the description, go show those guys some love. They will certainly appreciate it, and I'll appreciate it as well. Finally, if you like what I do, go ahead and support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again very soon.